for himself. All he did was to start from the border towns and let us know what he's doing to protect this country, so that our borders are safe. And so on page 13, the president starts to tell us that we are spending a lot of money keeping our security agencies at our borders to protect us. And rightly so, Mr. Speaker. 10 years ago, terrorism may not have been an issue to Ghana, Burkina Faso, or to even a few of the nations down south of West Africa. But today it is. If you cross the border to Burkina, and the major road between Paga and Ouaga, you may find it difficult to get about 10 cars moving on that major road that used to have more than 100 to 1,000 cars moving, because you do it at your own risk. In Burkina who want to come to Ghana and could have driven just 2 hours to Paga. But today they have to travel almost 2 days by aircraft to come to Ghana. We've taken security for granted because the security is good. And so even when West Africa security has deteriorated, Ghana has improved so much that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, you needed security escort from Kintampo, particularly in the evening, to Tamale. Today, we don't do it. Mr. Speaker, you need a security escort from Ashiaman through Bole to Wa. Today, we don't do it. Mr. Speaker, what did the president do? The president and his government, realizing that the safety of the individual, the safety of Ghana is the most critical aspect of every human life. To be alive is the most important thing in your life. Any other thing, you can work for it. But when you are not alive, that's the end of you. And so the president, knowing that security is so important, decided that it was important to spend a large amount of resources to ensure that we are safe. We are currently building 12 forward operating bases for the armed forces to envelop the northern sector of the country. And these buildings are at various levels of completion.
A contingent from Ghana's armed forces stormed the community allegedly brutalized any residents they could set their eyes on at Ashiaman last, by rounding off over 100 individuals who the Ghana Armed Forces described as suspects in connection with the murder of a soldier attached to the 3rd Infantry Battalion Trooper Sharif Imoro. In a quick reaction to the incident, the Commissioner for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, Joseph Whittal, said that the exercise does not pass the test for an intelligence-led operation, while adding that the military acted wrongly. Speaking on the sidelines of the Ghana-EU dialogue held at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, he explained further that their action was unacceptable and reprehensible. However, he said Shraj will investigate and that the process can only be triggered if an official complaint is filed on the matter. This is not the first time civilians have allegedly killed a militiaman in Ghana. On May 2017, an army officer, Captain Maxwell Adam Mahama, was lynched by a furious crowd of townspeople at Dantro Obwase in the country's central region. According to reports, the army officer had stopped to ask for directions. Locals saw his gun and assumed he was an armed thief and went to alert others. He was set upon by a crowd, stoned to death and partially burned.
and the Ghana Armed Forces. In fact, we met this afternoon, closed doors, with the Defense Ministry and the Military High Command. Then my able lieutenants, my committee members, we've met and we've come to an agreement that the members of the committee, the Minister of Defense, and the Military High Command will pay a visit on Thursday to Ashiaman to dialogue with the people of Ashiaman as well as the Military High Command. So for the meantime, we pleaded with our honorable member from Ashiaman. I don't wish to be in his shoes. Normally he's very loud on the committee, but today what accounts will say, Bema Emre. He's so worried. I haven't seen him so down like this before, which means it has taken a toll on him, and we all sympathize with him. On behalf of the committee, we want to sympathize with the bereaved, the young soldiers' family, and also sympathize with the affected victims, those who were innocently beaten. They were not part of it. Our mission is to make sure we have peace in this country. The unfortunate incident that happened, we have all condemned it. And Minister has even apologized on behalf of the military that they admit that they were excesses. So we are here to tell the media so far what the committee has also done and decision that we've reached with Ministry of Defense and the Military High Command.
Incidents like this in the life of the country do happen. We are shaping up a country, and we are going to have some of these incidents, regrettable incidents happening there. But I will still appeal to the people of Ghana to be very respectful of people in uniform. It will help all of us. But we cannot say, I will not say anything until the committee itself and us have gone on Thursday to the place and visited the place to ascertain for ourselves. One of the reasons why we are not going immediately is that investigation is still ongoing. We don't want to compromise whatever investigation that will happen. And that's why we task our colleague to tone down on the statement so that we can all work together as unison to ensure that this tricky situation is brought under control. We want a peaceful Ghana, that's all. So after Thursday, you will be hearing from us. Thank you very much.
In fact, he totally blew the opportunity to tell us the real state of the nation. Because the truth is, every Ghanaian knows the real state of the nation. There's no Ghanaian home that does not feel the pinch of what is happening. And you come and tell us your what? Doctored achievements that we are even going to punch holes into. I think the minority must come out with the real state of the nation. And that one is like asking people to speak up, and the president will hear. His existence, where he sits and sleeps, looks like a different country. Yeah. Because I'm shocked. Even in the state of the nation, he could not, even as a commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces, and you've lost one man in an unfortunate situation in Ashiaman, and you could not just send a message of condolence to the family, and let alone condemn the situation and assure us that punitive measures will be happening. Yes, the people know what the real issues are. I'm living, my constituency is a border town, and they'll tell you today, people go across the border. Those times they'll cross the border to go and buy fuel and bring to Ghana. They cross the border to go and buy cement and bring to Ghana. That is how bad. So I would say smuggling. It's not. The person is looking at the economic situation and looking at where his money he can balance and what? Make sure he gets value for the little money he has struggled to get. So, for me, it's unfortunate. And you see, when a person, someone is dying and is drowning in the river, he is crapping to the next available straw. That's what I see. The NPP government is virtually dead.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer. He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer. He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer. He has labored.
Good morning to you, and thank you very much for choosing Pan-African Television. We've chosen Pan-African Television and chosen several other radio stations across the country, including Radio Gold 90.5 FM, which is broadcasting live from the Greater Accra region. Today, we bring you the mother of all talk shows. Thank you for choosing us once again. Good morning. My name is Sena Nombo. This morning, of course, we are talking about the issues with regards to what has transpired in Ashaiman. And let me read to you, this is the latest on the subject. Because the police are saying that after a week of sustained intelligence-led operation, they have arrested the key suspects involved in the murder of Imoru Sheriff, the soldier who was found dead at Taifa, Ashaiman on 4th March 2023. Full details of the arrest made by the police on Thursday 9th March and are done today 10th March within Ashaiman and its environs will follow. Now, this is the Ghana Police Service saying we have made some progress on finding the suspects who were involved in the alleged murder of the soldier in question. Now, the attention will now turn to the military, who carried out what they call a coup in Ashaiman that involved mass brutalities of everybody they saw. Anybody that was outside at the time was subjected to beatings, and a lot of people suffered. They've been highly condemned. When you saw earlier clips on the Defense and Interior Committee, after they have met the military, the Ministry of Defense on this issue. So that's our very first topic of discussion. What transpired in Ashaiman and the developments that have followed. Like I said, the latest development is that the key suspect, the police said they've picked them up and investigations will continue. Now, then we'll move on to the issue of the state of the nation's address. In fact, the debate in Parliament has started. One of the key comments that were made by the Honorable Sammy Gyamfi was the fact that the President did not find space in the State of the Nation's address to speak to the issue of what had happened in Ashaiman, because that had happened a day before he did the State of the Nations. But we'll be taking the thoughts of the panelists that we have today on what the President said. There were three key things he said to me that I will never forget. The comments he made on COVID and the fact that nothing was done wrong is something that was sticking in my memory. The issue of the debt situation, where he said they have neither spent recklessly nor borrowed recklessly, is another one. And then I was expecting that for the very, very first time, our President would not blame COVID and Ukraine for our economic woes. He actually did that. So those are the three things, observations I made from the state of the nation's address. Well, then the third issue we're discussing is the issue of the vaccine and vaccine shortage across the country. So those are the three issues we are discussing today. We'll take a break. When we come back, I will introduce my panelists for today, and then we'll start the discussion. Stay tuned.
He's the Redeemer. He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer. He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the
Hello, information.
Madam,
May I have still not got the money for that list of expensive building materials you sent to me? The price of the iron rods have been increased too much, had I?
Madam, relax. Look, that's not why I even called. I just visited IPCP, where the engineers told me everything about Trasacco fast floor.
Trawanko, please, those people are expensive. Are they not the people building those big houses in town? I beg, go and
Madam, in fact, I used to think the same until I visited their office today, and they gave me an estimate of how much it will cost. No more, the estimate is real. It's cheaper than the one I even sent you.
Wow.
Building contractors, foremen, masons. Visit IPCP, the Trasacco Fast Floor. Engineers will assist you build an affordable, faster and stronger building.
Oh, madam. It is done.
Wow.
Trasacco Fast Floor. Stronger, faster and affordable.
This is a Trasacco construction product.
Hello. What are you doing Tuesday to Friday, 7:30 to 9 o'clock p.m. every day? You should be watching The Couch. I'll tell you why. On Tuesdays, we talk social issues, lifestyle health, all those everyday issues that affect us in the big ways. Late Wednesdays are for book reviews. Thursdays are for the hard talk, those socio-economic, policy-oriented, political questions that demand for the tough questions to be asked. And personality profiling Fridays, when we get to know the stories behind the winning personalities we love. Inspirational story from inspirational personalities. Hey, listen, you really cannot miss The Couch with me, Amma Pratt. Still, the only TV show with a hat.
It's also a little bit of a cliche. I mean, we're all used to the James Bond scene, as it were, with all the ambassadors sipping champagne and seeming to do nothing else but dine and sip champagne at receptions. That is not true. That is.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom.
Welcome back from that break to the Mother of All Talk Shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. In the studio with me this morning, as always, Comrade Kwesi Pratt Jnr, who is General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana. Moving closer to me is Solomon Owusu, who is a member of the MPP's communication team, and sitting right to my, okay, I said right, so saying right there becomes difficult, because Sammy Gyamfi is sitting very close to me. It's the communications, national communications officer of the National Democratic Congress. We are expecting Honorable Joyce Bar Muktari, who is the spokesperson for the John Dramani Mahama campaign. That will be our panel for today. Thank you very much for choosing us once again. I will start the discussion today, of course, on the matter of what has transpired in Ashaiman, the latest development that we're hearing that the police have actually made some progress. And I'll start from my right with Lasa. Good morning.
Good morning, Sena.
Nice to see you doing quite well.
Yeah. Happy to be here. First of all, let me say a very good morning to our cherished viewers and listeners across the globe, and a good morning to my colleague panelists, especially Uncle Kwesi Pratt Jnr, who inspires some of us, a lot. Sena, I'm happy we are starting with this issue of Ashiaman and what has transpired there in the course of this week. Because as a political party, and here I'm speaking for the National Democratic Congress, we've been appalled by the events that have taken place in Ashiaman. The first has to do with the murder of the soldier, which is what precipitated the subsequent unfortunate events. We are still not very clear as to what occasioned that unfortunate incident. We don't know why the soldier was murdered in that, gruesome fashion. But the fact is, nobody has the right to deprive anybody of their right to life. Nobody has the right to take the laws of this country into their own hands and mete out mob justice on anybody, not to talk of a soldier, a man in uniform. And so we condemn that atrocious act, and on behalf of the National Democratic Congress, we want to express our commiserations to the Ghana Armed Forces and the immediate family of the slain soldier. It is our prayer that our law enforcement agencies will quickly investigate the matter, apprehend the culprits, and make sure that they face the full rigors of the law. It is refreshing that we are hearing that the police has effected some arrest of some suspects. As to whether these are the actual culprits, we wait to see what evidence the police has to support the arrest they have made. But at least it is refreshing. It shows that the Ghana Police Service that is responsible for the maintenance of law and order and the investigation of such criminal acts on a daily basis are doing something about it. We don't want this to be another unresolved murder. This murder must be resolved. The perpetrators must be found. They must be prosecuted and punished in accordance with law to serve as a deterrence to others. We've not forgotten how Major Maxwell Mahama was murdered by residents of Zidenchem Boase in the Central region a few years ago in similar fashion. And we've had, even in recent time, many of such unfortunate incidents where thugs in various communities take the laws into their hands, attack law enforcement agencies, men belonging to our law enforcement agencies in uniform and so on, or people they even suspect to be thieves and so on. This is a canker that we need to root out of our lives as a people. And so how the police and other law enforcement agencies deal with this matter, the speed with which they investigate this matter, arrest perpetrators, put them before the courts for us as a political party is very, very important. So we commiserate with the family of the slain soldier and the entire Ghana Armed Forces for the loss of this soldier. It shouldn't have happened. Very, very heart-wrenching. But what is most disgusting, is the handling of this matter by the Ghana Armed Forces. As painful as the murder of the soldier is, it still doesn't give the Ghana Armed Forces the right to take the laws of this country into their hands and behave as though we are living in a jungle. We are living in the rule of law, and we have systems, we have institutions, we have due process for resolving issues such as the murder of the soldier. And the Ghana Armed Forces of all institutions should know that and should do better. A soldier has been murdered. It's been brought to the attention of the Ghana Armed Forces. If they wanted to go on the ground and even through their military police effect any arrest, I believe that they should have done what the police has done by first of all gathering intelligence on what actually transpired, the suspects involved, so that they could move in on the suspects, arrest them for the police if they wanted to do anything like that. But it is totally wrong. It is totally unacceptable, totally disgusting that in this day and age, there are men in uniform will be deployed to Ashiaman to attack innocent civilians, many of whom, and I don't want to say all of them because I'm not God, I don't know whether some of the people who were attacked were involved in the murder of the soldier, but I know that many of them, 99.9999% of the innocent young men, some of them women, some of them children, who were assaulted, some beaten to pulp. You know, most of these people knew nothing, absolutely nothing about the murder of the soldier. And so you cannot, you know, pay people who have done absolutely nothing, you know, wrong against the law with such evil acts. We condemn that in no uncertain terms as a political party. And we think that Parliament must investigate what has happened there. Who gave the orders? Who made that deployment? Okay, who are the soldiers who were caught on camera attacking innocent civilians? Because it cannot be that any time a soldier will be killed, the people of the community where that incident might have happened will be subjected to such unlawful, inhumane, degrading treatments. And so, even as we condemn the murder of the soldier, we equally condemn the high-handedness of the military as far as their response to this is concerned. What is most unfortunate in all this has to do with the deafening silence of the government of the day on this matter. You made reference to the fact that conspicuously missing in the President's State of the Nation address was a comment on this matter, which had become very topical the day before he went to Parliament to deliver the message of the State of the Nation. He, as the Commander-in-Chief of the Ghana Armed Forces, at least should have commiserated with the Ghana Armed Forces and the family of the slain soldier. And we hold the view that he should have equally condemned the unlawful, you know, high-handed handling of the matter by the military, their invasion of Ashiaman, the indiscriminate and arbitrary, you know, beating of innocent civilians and all that. The first gentleman of the land had a duty to the people of this country to condemn and to tell the country what his government intended to do or is doing about that matter. But we didn't hear anything like that. It's been days. Before I came here, I was searching the internet to see whether the Ministry of Information has even issued a statement on the matter, or whether the Ministry of Interior or the Ministry of Defense has even issued a statement to comment on the matter. I found none. Clearly, they are not interested in the welfare and the peace and stability of Ashiaman. And you can see that from the way most of them have commented on this matter, from the chairman of the Defense Committee in Parliament, Kennedy Japan, to even the Defense Minister Nitiwo. When you listen to them, you don't get any clarity on their position on the matter. They sound very ambivalent, and some of them have even openly endorsed the unlawful brutalities that have been meted out to the people of Ashiaman. That for me is very, very cheap. Okay, you can see a clear attempt to, you know, create an impression that, oh, we support what the soldiers are doing just to carry favor with them. That for me is very unprincipled, very hypocritical, totally condemnable. None of us sitting here have any issues with the military. They defend the country. They protect all of us. We respect and we honor them. But when they go wrong, we should have the courage to tell them that you've gone wrong. Okay? You've gone beyond acceptable limits, and make sure that the right things are done. We are not living in a jungle where it is the survival of the fittest. We are living in a democracy governed by the rule of law, and everybody, including the president, who is the commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces, including soldiers, including policemen, are subject to the law. This culture of lawlessness, which is fast festering under this Akufo-Addo Bawumia government, okay, where state institutions have been bastardized. State institutions can do as they please, can violate the human rights of innocent civilians, beat people up without any consequences, must be stopped. Because if that is not checked, very soon you will have citizens attacking those we have entrusted with our security and with our protection. I'm sure you've seen videos from La, where there's been some altercation and confrontation between the people and the military over some land disputes. And in that video, you see a civilian saying that if he is given a bomb to go to Burma camp to bomb the soldiers there, he will do that. Why? Because of the continuous, abuse of the rights of the people, the brutalization of the people in that enclave by soldiers, which in all cases have gone unpunished. People are fast losing confidence in our security agencies, and that trend has been on ascendancy under this despotic Akufo-Addo regime, which doesn't clearly believe in the rule of law, and we as an opposition are very concerned about that, and so we condemn what our men in uniform have done in Ashiaman. That is not to say that we have anything against them. We are saying that on this particular matter, they totally got it wrong. They should have known better. They should have done better. We want bipartisan investigations into the matter. Let those responsible for the death of the soldier be punished, but let those responsible for these unfortunate brutalities on innocent civilians in Ashiaman, okay, be fished out and dealt with in accordance with law. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sammy Gyamfi, starting the conversation on the incident in Ashiaman. So there are two separate incidents. One involved the killing of a soldier, and I was just reading what the Ghana Police Service has put out. And the subsequent one involving military men on the ground, boots on the ground in a manner rarely seen. And it was as if it was Ashaiman versus the military. Unfortunately, the Ashiaman people were not as armed as the military. So it was very bad what happened in Ashaiman. And those are the two incidents that we are discussing this morning. Solomon Owusu will take his turn.
Thank you very much, Sena, and good morning to co-panelists. Mr. Pratt, though you were late, you have to be coming to London, Sammy. Sena, it's a very dicey situation. I have heard a number of Ghanaians quickly bastardize the Ghana Armed Forces. And if we don't take care, this country, one day we will wake up and there will not be any country. You see, the root cause of what has happened to the young soldier is the simple reason of indiscipline. We are becoming a country of indisciplined, especially youth. You have a young man in secondary college who goes to write an exam. He is unable to write the exam. He finishes, puts a camera on himself, and insults the president of the land, who is supposed to be the commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces. People say, oh, that is normal. Then we go ahead. We have 8 young ladies of China SHS who, for no reason, just wakes up on their phone camera and insult the president of the land, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And we eulogize such girls. the future of the country. They insult with impunity the one that is supposed to lead the army. You go to Denchira Boase, an officer in uniform. And here let me say that when an officer is in uniform, it symbolizes the authority of the Ghana Armed Forces and by extension the authority of the state. The citizens of Denchira Boase did not look at that. They murdered Mahama in cold blood. As we speak, we have not been able to identify those that did that committed that heinous crime. Then on the 4th of March, we are told that a newly passed out a trooper goes to visit the mother in Ashaiman, and he is stabbed severally to death. You see, the hypocrisy of the Ghanaian is becoming legendary. And we must call a spade and look straight into people's faces and tell them. You would agree with me that between the 4th and 7th, nobody made mention of the cold-blooded murder of the young officer. A soldier's life matter. But he was killed. Those that killed the young man never saw him to be an asset of the state. And so when the Ghana Armed Forces took that decision to go into the area, then it became news. All of a sudden, you will see one phrase: we commiserate with the family of the bereaved soldier, and then immediately narrow it down to the Ghana Armed Forces. You see, we must tell people who think they are bigger and stronger than the state that they can never be stronger than the state. It is just not right for civilians to go and kill a soldier. For what reason? My small investigation tells me that it was just on a matter of girlfriend, boyfriend. That this young man was living in Ashiaman. As a young man, goes to have his training, passes out in Sunyani, coming back to visit the mother. Then the girlfriend that he left there, because area boys are taking over, they were afraid that hey, with this new posture, he will come and snatch the girlfriend back. They organized to kill the young man. That is the information that I've gathered. Maybe investigation can prove otherwise. But be that it may be or sound, nobody had the right to kill the young officer, Imoro Sheriff. And this morning I want to dedicate much of my time, or most of my time, to commiserate with the family. Because as we speak, in the midst of what the military men went to Ashiaman to do, we are yet to hear any civilian dead. But the family members of that young soldier have lost a loved one. They are never going to see that young soldier in their lives. I heard one of the victims that was brutalized, the wife saying that the husband has been away for 3 days and they are not feeding. With the officer, the family will never see him again, so they will never be fed if their lives are going to be dependent on the young officer. We must not entertain some of these things in our country. And that's why I went back to the rope of indiscipline. The earlier as Ghanaians we begin to recognize that without discipline this country will not move forward, the better for all of us. Now to the Ghana Armed Forces. They say 2 wrongs do not make it right. Yes, you have a justifiable cause, because for someone to pass out as a soldier, it means the country would have expended some resources on that person. It takes a bit of time to train someone to be a soldier, so we can understand your frustration. I can also understand your frustration from the point of view that a colleague officer in the person of Major Mama was murdered like that, and we are yet to bring the perpetrators of that act to book. But hey, if the operation was narrowed down to those that you believe per your intelligence had committed this heinous crime, then I would never have any difficulty with it. But to the extent that whoever mattered, it could have been me going to visit a friend in that area who is staying somewhere in North Kaneshi, but caught in the act. Would I have to receive slaps for something that I knew nothing about it? So for me, there should have been some level of prior investigation before moving into full gear. Now, I'm very happy that the police say they have been able to make some arrests. I believe that the arrest must bring these issues to some level of proper perspective. It is for the police to do a good job so that when they go to court, there will not be any gaps or there will not be any loopholes for the victims. Because when you go to court, it's not about what you are saying, it's about the evidence at play. Whether they have enough evidence to seek conviction. I will believe at this stage, I will wait for the full investigation and urge the judiciary to make sure that only the truth would prevail, so that the affected family will see that indeed they receive some form of justice for their brother. Now, I have also been following development in Ashiaman ever since the brutalities took place, and I dare say there are some individuals over there that must guard the way and manner they are going about this whole military actions. They must not do anything that will pitch the people of Ashaiman against the military. Mind you, the Michel camp is very close to Ashaiman. But you would agree with me that but for the murdering of this young officer, soldiers do not just get up from the Michel camp to invade Ashaiman and begin to beat people. And that is why all of us must tread cautiously. I can understand the MP of the area. Yes, they are your people. Yes, you need their votes. But you must also understand that you are dealing with a state institution called the Ghana Armed Forces that protects all of us. If we are calling for investigations and also reparations for those that have been affected by the operations, I am yet to hear them even call for some form of compensation for the officer. You must be seen to be a father for all. So this morning, Sena, as I started, I believe that it's not a good situation. I believe that the Ghana Armed Forces could have done better, but the emphasis must be on those boys or girls, if they may be, who decided to commit this first-degree felony by killing a soldier who was in uniform. I will end my submission here.
Thank you very much. The promise from the police is that in time they'll release the full details of the arrests that were made by the police on Thursday, 9th March, and at dawn, that was yesterday, 10th March 2023, within Ashaiman and its environment. So we're still waiting for those details from the Ghana Police Service. In the meantime, Udeduje is on Facebook watching us. He says Akufo-Addo was one of the first people to condemn the killing of George Floyd, but yet to condemn any of the deaths of Ghanaians by security services. And even in a video clip from Boku, you can hear someone in the background say, next time it will be war, right in front of armed soldiers. There is also this one. He continues to say, Solo, do you remember the proverb that says, an adult who doesn't respect himself would have children jeer and ridicule him on the streets? Prince Duzo is also saying that military brutality in Ashaiman must be condemned by all. We're in a real democracy, for God's sake. We should at least also condemn the barbaric act of some unscrupulous persons that led to the death of the young soldier.
There's also Yakubu Alasan says, until we stop recruiting political security, these things will never stop. There's Samuel Ama, who is also joining us on Facebook. He says the state of the nation. Okay, he's talking about the state of the nation. I'm seeing a couple on the state of the nation. I will read those when we get to that one. Dela Abdallah says, if they could not do it for JB, who are Ashiaman people, remnants. Okay. There's also a Kokusa who says, Sena, I disagree with Solomon also. Line of thinking submission. Then Nana Akufo-Addo is being insulted. Had he forgotten the statement of Asa Nkrumah, who said JDM can be insulted since it was free expression? Those are some of the messages you're sending to us. I'll read some more after Joyce Muktari is done, Mrs. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm very sincere about this. I thought that my brother Sammy Gyamfi had very outlined just about everything that I actually intended to say. So maybe then we just add a footnote to what he said by responding to some of the things my brother here has just spoken to. You know, I've observed for some very strange reason that the whole of referring to their critics or the generality of the Ghanaian populace as being hypocritical, or the hypocrisy of the Ghanaian. I'm not too sure what they are trying to imply. I would also want to state categorically that we must all as citizens, first and foremost, condemn literally and figuratively impunity. Not just the impunity of government spokespersons, but government operatives generally. And I remember a few months ago when I was here with the Venerable Dr. Tony Edu, he bemoaned the impunity that somehow has become a main feature of this Akufo-Addo administration. You can see gradually that this level of impunity is trickling down. Basically, it's almost become like a logistics chain. So we have His Excellency the President deliver, to my mind, the most critical State of the Nation address. At the time when this nation is mocked in crisis, at a time when we cannot even afford vaccines, and this morning I am so sad because we have actually recorded some cases of measles for the first time in God knows how long. The question we should be asking ourselves is, do we know how long it would take to eventually eradicate this spread that has just started? And this conversation has been going on for quite some time. And it is also because of this same impunity that even when the health minister was invited under such very precarious circumstances to respond or react to the lack of vaccines, we waited and the committee sat in vain. Sena, we come from areas that struggled to eradicate some of these life-threatening infections. It is one of the poorest also in terms of the economy, in terms of geographical location, name it. And so to add insult to injury is for us to not even have planned adequately for vaccines in the face of this outbreak. Can you imagine what that looks like? If you know any family that has been affected by polio, measles, and others, can you imagine what a modern day situation of this kind will actually look like to parents who find themselves in this category with young children who require these vaccines, especially for those who cannot even afford? Maybe there are some private clinics that even have them, but mostly people can ill afford them. It is why these are procured by the state and offered to various public facilities in particular, so that every Ghanaian child who is born will be immunized against some of these life-threatening conditions. Sena, we must all condemn in no uncertain terms and without any fear of contradiction. So you have our president speak in the manner in which he did. The Commander-in-Chief of the Ghana Armed Forces, a constitutionally created armed forces to ensure the protection of citizens as outlined under Chapter 5 of our Constitution. And absolutely not a scintilla, not an iota, not a word was uttered by him or uttered by him either to commiserate with, to condole with, to express his disappointment or dismay, or even his angst at what had happened in Ashaiman. Look at the history of this country in terms of the coup d'etats from 1972 right up to 1992. Look at the trajectory that has been our history associated with excesses under various coup d'etats in this country. It is these excesses that led to the widely publicized National Reconciliation Commission and its work. And we all paid rapt attention to the excesses of revolutions and put them in a certain historical perspective, where you had even some levels of repatriation, some compensation, some apologies, name it, to try and bring closure to that aspect of our history. So when you have a situation of this kind, look at the volatility of that location. Look at the population of that area. Look at the crowds. Just look at the geographical location of Ashaiman. So imagine that we had woken up the next day and that there were reprisal attacks. How would we fare as a people? Look at the level of hardship. Look at where the economy is. Sena, on all the key indices in terms of freedom of speech, freedom of the media, our poverty indexes, corruption perception index, on all the peer review mechanism, now even on our SDGs in terms of health, where at least we're making some inroads, we have suffered huge setbacks in terms of even HIV prevalence rates currently. And now you have this situation with lack of vaccines. And now we're being told that these things will really happen in the next 2 weeks. Sena, we must remember that this is an administration whose biggest claim to fame is their condemnation of military coups over the years. President Akufo-Addo's major claim to fame is his record as what? An upholder or a student of the rule of law. I remember even in times past, people described him as a human rights advocate. It was almost as if he was a repository of everything human rights that the Ghanaian could speak of. Little wonder then that he is suddenly president of this country. And he literally reigns, excuse my French, almost in a certain despotic manner. Surveys all that he owns and believes he possesses with no apologies to anybody and makes no bones about it. Can you just shut your eyes for a few minutes? It is a question I ask people all the time. That someone else were president other than President Akufo-Addo. That someone else were vice president other than Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. And these similar facts were presented before us. How would all of us be reacting? How would my brother here, as a government communicator, react? I'm sure there will be deep condemnation. People would trace and track the history of this country in manners we probably could only imagine. People would, create. They would even make Ghana ungovernable. And we've seen all these threats in the past. There'll be mayhem. Just put President Akufo-Addo today in opposition then and replay the set of facts as we have them. You know, it is very, very important that in whatever we do and however we do it, let's put these issues in proper context. Look at a poor woman. Imagine the effort it takes for a gentleman like that from Ashaiman to be enlisted into the Ghana army. You know, I don't want to belabor the point about what happened, what the reasons are. That is just purely conjecture. It's a totally useless exercise to dwell on why what happened to him happened. It is totally unnecessary. Let's look at the impunity that is in our society now, that has led to the lawlessness that we all witness in Ashaiman, for example. Why do you think that the defense minister is trying so hard even to placate the member of parliament for the area? He probably appreciates the volatilities involved. He appreciates the sensibilities that have been stoked. He also appreciates and probably deep down recognizes also that the military may have gone too far. I mean, Sena, look at the images. You know, for a minute, when I first saw those videos, I honestly didn't believe that this was Ghana. It actually took me a while for those photographs to make sense. Are we suddenly back living in a jungle where the laws don't work, where rules don't work, where we just take the laws into our hands and behave anyhow, where we actually have kangaroo approaches to discipline and enforcement of sin? Think about that for a second. Let's ruminate on this for a few minutes. What exactly are we experiencing? What is the level of governance that we expect, that we anticipate? Because you see, everything, Sena, is leadership. The rest is course. So when your leader doesn't care, not sensitive to anything, refuses to be compassionate. This morning I listened to another government communicator, I think on one of the platforms, and he says what? And that there is a certain strategy sometimes where you don't admit mistakes. Yes, they go to all these political strategy groups and so they tell you admitting any failure is almost as if you are telling everybody that, you know, we have failed. Apologizing is almost like expressing a weakness. So yes, be jingoistic, appear very powerful, you know, muster all the courage you can. Speak for an hour and a half and tell us just what you think or what you believe in your dreams is the Ghana that you imagine that we all live in. That is where we are. It is the impunity with which we are being governed more than anything that breaks my heart. And I watched that poor woman and I asked myself, imagine any parent being in a situation. And you see, when all these things happen, it is the women and the children who suffer the most. And this is actually a week when we are all celebrating International Women's Day, talking about what? Embracing equality and equity. In fact, I remember months ago, or years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, our president was described as what? A champion for the cause of women. And he did not even spare a second to express any condolences. Something he could easily have done, even without necessarily going into the facts. Because the facts are evident. We all saw what happened. We all witnessed what happened. There were images everywhere. And this is not a war-torn country. This is not a country that has failed. This is not a country where we don't have leadership. This is not a country where the military hierarchy does not exist. This is a country even overburdened with government appointees across the country. And we didn't even have a minister for defense drive there, considering the urgency of the matter, to call for calm, to call for peace, to call for a ceasefire. We didn't have the president even pick up a phone or drive his long convoy there. There are some matters that require for a leader to step out of his comfort zone or her comfort zone. Then it shows that you are also human, because then you give a human face to what has happened. You know, we spend a lot of time on, excuse me, very useless jargon, just nomenclature, highfalutin expressions that mean nothing. Why? Did we not promise that we will apply the rule of law? Did we not promise that we will ensure that the rights and protection of citizens are assured under President Akufo-Addo's administration? Did we not ensure that we were going to project to the best of our ability the state principles of sovereignty as guaranteed and enshrined in this constitution? So, but now you can tell there are some rights and there's others. There's rights for you and for me and for everybody else. There are different rules. Sena, my heart goes out to that poor woman, the poor family, the sad end to an otherwise great life that has been taken. But I will condemn any day the impunity with which the military sought to ensure discipline. And this is something that it behoves on all of us to be ardent that those sorts of acts will not be tolerated. But you see, I think that this is government's way of pushing everybody to the wall. It happened at the Yawasu West Wagon, if you remember, the by-election. It happened not too long ago in the 2020 election. The attacks, the lives that were lost, people being maimed, military vehicles running amok across the country. Then there is Ashaiman. And we have received almost no apology. Should human beings now be reduced to animals? Should we be treated as if we live in a forest? Should we be treated as if we are in a jungle? Where you tell us that when you mete out such violence on people because you are looking for a perpetrator of this heinous act of murder, that you go to smoke the criminals out by attacking everything in your way. And then you tell us that it is what? To ensure discipline. When there isn't discipline at the flag at the Jubilee House, it will certainly trickle down. When there's a lack of respect for the rights and protection of human beings, it will trickle down. When there is no remorse or any semblance of sensitivity to the plight of a people that you govern, this is what you get. We ought to condemn these acts of violence and impunity. Sad as this matter is, those attacks, the violence that we've experienced, how will that bring back the life of that young soldier? How will that compensate the family of that young soldier? How would it in any way even seem to make better this terribly heinous crime that has occurred? But what impression does it give to the generality of this populace? Even where a murderer, right, has taken a life, do you understand? The law is still mandated to give them what? A fair trial. To give them a hearing. Mandated to investigate, arrive at conclusions. They could have conducted swoop arrests, taking them to the nearest police station. But to ransack, as they did, should be condemned. In our nascent democracy, such activities, if tolerated, if countenanced, run the risk of generating riotous activities. Riots like we've never seen before. It is important, and it behooves on all of us as a people to hold our government accountable, to hold the military accountable, to impose upon them in whatever strong terms that we can or should, that human lives of any kind, located anywhere, matter. And that the way to ensure that you are able to smoke out criminals of this kind of attack is not to go in there armed to the teeth to destroy anything in your way and call that what? Ensuring discipline. Do you remember those days when they would make people hold their ears and hop around the streets and all of that? Women stripped and whipped all over the place. I am telling you, for a few minutes, put yourself in the place of then candidate Akufo-Addo, and that this had happened even under Jerry Rawlings or under Kufo or under Professor Mills or even John Dramani Mahama. You and I would know no peace. Maybe would have probably been seen an overkill or an overload of Kwesi Pratt Jnr times 50. Please, as citizens, let's show some sympathy. Let's show some respect. Let's condemn these acts of impunity that our own president has decided to lead and preside over. Let's avoid the recklessness with which we are using state apparatus and power. Let's also avoid the wickedness that we are actually meting out to the same citizens who killed to elect us into office. Let's remember that no matter what kind of leader you are, when you assume a certain humane face, apply compassion, mercy, even temper justice with mercy, that it is a matter of great leadership to rise above petty considerations, to show leadership when such things happen. Why? There's nothing wrong with the president as commander-in-chief disagreeing with the action of the military in Ashaiman. There's nothing wrong with the defense minister disagreeing or even apologizing. How about all the innocent people who probably had nothing to do with what happened, who had no clue even what was going on, who generally had no activity whatsoever in and around that area, who were all part? I mean, think about it. And yet we were all over the place condemning capital punishment that was meted out somewhere in the country. What is it that the military were doing? Is that a democratic way? Is that the way you uphold the rule of law? Do you now turn the military into custodians of discipline or trustees of discipline? So if we sit here and we misbehave, they can just run in and ransack the place, beat us up, and then say it's because one of us had committed a certain crime. Please, I'm a mother too, and my heart goes out to that poor family, that poor woman. But I'm sure even she knows that all the beatings notwithstanding, it will never bring back that Sam to life. It is why the law always ensures that perpetrators of such crimes are brought to book, tried, and sentenced. Sometimes you even attract the maximum sentence in hard labor. Please, even as we express our commiserations and our sympathies, we are all human. Imagine that this were any one of us son. But imagine what it is like if all of us lived in Ashaiman. We were caught in that, because of course they wouldn't know that it was Sammy Gyamfi, or that is you, Sena, or that is Uncle Kwesi Pratt. No. Everybody who was caught in their way. These are actions we must not tolerate in a democracy as shaky as ours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A couple of the messages you're sending to us on this discussion we're having on what transpired in Ashaiman, the two events. This is God Day Atom, who says, good morning. Sena, Ghana Forces is my alma mater. Please now listen to me carefully. I'm not supporting what happened, but I can assure you the more they drag the case with regards to Major Mahama, the country should expect more, and worse situation with regards to civil-military relationship. We can as well pretend it's not an issue. There's Samuel Amawu says, considering what happened at Ashaiman and similar ones that had happened in the past under this MPP government that claims to believe in the rule of law, I am compelled to ask whether we are under military rule or a civilian rule. What is more shocking is the fact that this is happening under MPP's government. that claim they believe in the rule of law. A sender from Santa Maria. Amenyavi Stevens says, under the Rawlings regime from 1979, there were military excesses which was squarely blamed on Rawlings, though there's never been any history of his physical presence on the scenes. So can Akufo-Addo exonerate himself on this matter? Bra Rich says, if you were the Minister of Defense, what would you do after Mahama incident? Attack on the coat of arms is a declaration of war. That's what he says. Hamza Khalid says, Sena, okay, I hear you. Thank you. There's Abdul Kadir Katariga, who is also joining us. Says, may the soul of the young man rest in perfect peace. But some of us will never go for human rights law in this country, because the behavior of our current president, who claims to be a human rights lawyer, means why he does not believe in the rule of law. That is him sending that message. Let me read this one coming from Magdo, who sends this. It says, Ghana is very fortunate to have a supposed human rights activist as a president. If the president were to be known as a tyrant, Ghana will be inflamed by now. The military and police brutality under the human rights president is legendary and unprecedented. There's also one from Mago, who says, it is same Nanado who sanctioned the military to evade parliament on 6th or 7th dawn in 2021. That's January, I believe. Yet nothing happened. So they are emboldened. There are several other messages. I'll go through them shortly. But let's listen to Comrade Kwesi Pratt on this.
Well, first of all, I'd like to highly commend the Ghana Police Service under the leadership of Inspector General Dampare. First, for refusing to be part of the madness that happened in Ashiaman. And secondly, for professionally investigating the matter and eventually arresting 2 suspects without firing a shot. There are many aspects to this story that is missing in the public discussion. One of the things that I have noticed is that the statement by the military announcing this exercise had a signature under it. Anybody who has seen that statement should look at it again. The signature of the Lieutenant General who allegedly signed this statement was scanned and placed on the statement. That raises many questions. Did the Lieutenant General write the statement? And if he wrote the statement, why was he not available to sign it? Is it possible that some people wrote this statement and scanned the Lieutenant General's signature and put it on that statement? It raises many questions about the authenticity of that statement. And if you have a copy, go and look at the statement again. It is not the real signature of the Lieutenant General which is on the statement. It's a scanned signature and raises many questions. Let's put that aside. We have been told that the young soldier who was killed whilst he was in military uniform. That is again a lie. It's a lie. Listen to me carefully. I have seen pictures of the soldier. He was in camouflage shorts. Who doesn't wear camouflage shorts in Ghana? Just walk the streets. So the fact that somebody wears camouflage shorts does not suggest that he's a soldier. It doesn't in any way suggest that he's a soldier. Now, I have followed this case quite seriously. And so, I can tell you on authority that it is not true that that soldier was killed over his girlfriend. That's false, completely false. It is false. Take it from me. It is false. I followed this case very, very seriously. It is false.
Okay.
This soldier, according to police intelligence, was stabbed by 2 persons who tried to take his telephone from him. They were just telephone snatchers. Okay? So it is not true that he was lynched by a mob over a girlfriend. It is not true. It's a false narrative, and we should not repeat it.
And yours has not been authenticated anyway.
Wait till Monday.
That's also you should have waited till Monday to say
No,
mine is a
because
false
I
statement.
have investigated the matter.
But I have also investigated. And we are all coming from a background that we don't have authority to pronounce the veracity of anyone's statement.
I am ready to put my head on it. Are you ready to do that?
I am ready to put my head on it.
That he was killed because he went and chased his girlfriend.
As we speak, yours is allegation, mine is an allegation.
Mine is not an allegation.
Mine is also not allegation.
So you are betting on it.
So that's what you have to be.
Monday you are going to be so embarrassed.
I don't have a problem.
You have a place to hide.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
So we have betted here.
Okay. But it will be useful for you to keep quiet and listen.
I'm listening.
As all of us did when you were talking. It is good for the sanity of this program. So my advice is that shut up and listen. Okay. Now, I'm saying that that is not true. But for whatever reason, a dead body is found. It is allegedly in military uniform, and immediately we come to the conclusion that the people of Ashiaman are guilty. Immediately we come to the conclusion that the people of Ashiaman are guilty. What is the basis of that nonsense? First of all, because a dead body has been found in Ashiaman, must not immediately lead to the conclusion that he was killed by even somebody from Ashiaman. This is simple common sense logic. You can find a dead body in Ashiaman, somebody who has been killed in Ashiaman, who may not be killed by anybody from Ashiaman. So they must provide a basis for their conclusion that he was killed by people from Ashiaman. Because if they knew who had killed him, this whole military exercise would have been useless. Because all they would have had to do would have been to zero in on the persons they knew killed him. The scope of the exercise and so on suggests that they didn't know who killed this young man. And how they came to the conclusion that this young man was killed by people of Ashiaman is very, very strange indeed. Now, I've also heard many people describe what happened in Ashiaman as murder. From the first time, murder. Fortunately, on this program, there are 2 persons who know the law, who are lawyers. How do you jump to the conclusion that it is murder? The mere discovery of a dead body cannot lead to the conclusion that murder has been committed. The mere discovery of a dead body, unless you want to turn the law upside down. In any case, this is not the first time that somebody has been killed in our country. Repugnant as it is. We've had the case of Ahmed Swale. Killed. We've had the case of J.B. Dankwa Edu and many others. Now, how do we justify the extent to which the military went in Ashiaman? You're saying that, look, he's a soldier. And because he's a soldier, soldiers have a right to look for those who killed him. When Ahmed Swale died, a Ghanaian journalist had massed up in Medina and even started throwing stones at residents of Medina. What would have been our reaction? When J.B. Dankwa Edu died, did the army move in? Why? If the army has responsibility for investigating murder and so on, as they claim, why didn't they move in when J.B. Dankwa Edu died? In any case, is it justified if a doctor is killed for medical practitioners in our country to load their strangers with poison and go around injecting people with poison? Would it be justified? Let's look for logical consistency in what is happening. There's no logical consistency in what is happening. Okay? Under the laws of this country, murder falls strictly under the purview of the police, not the military. Of the police. Since when did the military become responsible for investigating murder? Now, I'm getting very deeply worried because of the double standards being displayed all over the place. You have all these failed politicians who are telling us that coup d'etats are so bad. The military should be confined to their duties. They should not interfere in civilian matters. They have no business deciding whether government is doing well or is not doing well. They should just be confined to their barracks. That's what they are telling us. Now they are telling us this because of the fear that the collapse of this country's economy and all the social ills that are generated and so on are creating conditions for a possible coup d'etat. And they are frightened to hell about the possibility of a coup d'etat. So they are all waging a campaign against coup d'etats. And in that campaign, they say that soldiers should do their duties assigned to them by the constitution and the laws of this country and should not engage in any other thing. Now, all of a sudden, these very failed politicians are telling us that it is okay for soldiers to go beyond their mandate, their legal mandate, their constitutional mandate. You cannot condemn what happened in Ashiaman and be against coup d'etats. The principles are the same. The principles are the same to the extent that condoning what happened in Ashiaman is to say that soldiers can, when necessary, when they deem it necessary, to go beyond their legal and constitutional mandate. And if you allow them to go beyond their legal and constitutional mandate, they will stage coup d'etats, which is also an extension of their legal and constitutional mandate. We have to have logical consistency. Now, there's something that I've observed since this thing happened in Ashiaman. And I suspect, and my suspicion is very deep, that all the communicators of government and the ruling party are speaking to a script. Now, if this suspicion is founded, if this suspicion is true, then we are in deep, deep trouble. Why do I say this? Now, it is clear, and you hear them say it, that look, this move in the army, this raid on Ashiaman, is so popular within the armed forces that don't go against the armed forces. Flow with them. Don't annoy the soldiers. Keep the soldiers happy. Keep the soldiers happy so they'll be confined to their barracks so they will not cause any trouble for government. And the way to keep the soldiers happy is to give them the permission or the right to go out there and brutalize the civilian population. I think that this is the biggest insult to the men and women in uniform. It's a profound insult to the men and women in uniform. Look, the price of KK has tripled in less than 1 year. Look at where petroleum prices are. Soldiers are suffering like all the civilians. They cannot make ends meet. Many soldiers have become the ridicule of their family because they can't do what ordinary family leaders are supposed to do, and so on. Instead of guaranteeing the right to social services, decent housing and so on for soldiers, you are giving them the right to go and beat their fellow citizens. And you don't think that that's an insult to the soldiers? Soldiers don't eat, they don't drink. The increases in electricity bills, you think it doesn't affect soldiers? Even if it doesn't affect them, it affects their relatives, some of whom may be dependent on them. What soldiers need is not applause for brutalizing civilians. What soldiers need is the concrete improvement in their conditions of life. I will tell you something, and I wish somebody would deny it. And if it's denied, I will produce minutes. I will produce authentic minutes. Not too long ago, there was a discussion in the top hierarchy of the Ghana Armed Forces about the conditions in the 37 military hospital. Deplorable conditions in the 37 military hospital. Our soldiers, we send them to go and fight to defend us. We are talking about the rise of Islamic insurgency in the north of our country and so on. These soldiers will fight, they'll be injured and so on. When they come back to their own hospital, 37 military hospital, the conditions there are deplorable. So in the discussions about what to do, in order to improve the conditions in the 37 military hospital, do you know the suggestion which was made? That their gratuity should be used to rehabilitate the 37 military hospital. What madness is that? I personally, and take it from me, intervened to stop that nonsense. I personally intervened, quietly, beyond the cameras, beyond the microphones. I made an intervention to stop that nonsense. Soldiers cannot be guaranteed proper health care. The conditions of health care for soldiers are deteriorating. And you think you can win them over by encouraging them to beat civilians? What madness is that? Look, soldiers are only civilians in uniform. They are like us. They also have to eat, they have to drink, they have to protect their body from sunshine and rain and so on. They are just like us. Any attempt to put a wedge between civilians and soldiers is a miscalculated attempt by the ruling elite to keep us divided so that they can continue their nonsense. And soldiers should not allow that to happen. Civilians should not allow that to happen. Civilians and soldiers are one. Bad governance affects civilians the same way it affects soldiers. Bad governance affects soldiers the same way it affects civilians. And civilians and soldiers should not allow themselves to be divided to serve the purpose of any administration in our country. You know, I've been around for some time. And I've seen many things happen in our country. I listened very, very carefully to proceedings at the National Reconciliation Commission. And there was a particular case in which a soldier who was going to Ho went to the lorry station at Tudu. The vehicle which was ready to go was full. And he instructed the mate to remove somebody from the vehicle and put him on the vehicle. The mate refused. The soldier shot the mate instantly. Instantly. And I can repeat many other cases. Me, I was alive and an adult, a working adult. When I saw women of this country, women my mother's age, stripped naked and paraded on the streets of Ghana. Maybe you have forgotten. I saw it with my own eyes. There was a time in our history when 246 Ghanaians got missing. Up to today, we can't find them. They disappeared. The case already disappeared and so on. We cannot continue to foolishly support the impunity of the armed forces. The impunity of the armed forces cannot be in anybody's interest. And I say this in the full knowledge that there are so many decent men and women in the Ghana armed forces. So many of them. So many decent people in the Ghana armed forces. Perhaps more decent than the politicians who are urging them on. And I know that is a fact. The armed forces is not made up of people from outer space. It is made up of our brothers and sisters, our fathers, our cousins, and so on. We know them. And we know that they have nothing against the civilian population. And we know that there are so many of them who frowned on the visitation of brutalities on civilians. Please don't give the armed forces a bad name by creating the impression that their forte is violence against unarmed civilians and so on. It cannot be true, and it is not true. It is time for people in the armed forces to realize the importance of forging very good, excellent relations between the civilian population and themselves. Because on their own, they cannot even perform their duties without the cooperation of the civilian population. Why? The national security apparatus has just put out a slogan. You know that slogan. That when you hear something, report and so on. As part of the campaign against Islamic insurgency, if the army could do anything and everything on its own, why put down such a slogan? So the cooperation between the civilian population and the armed forces is critical for the effective performance of the duties of the armed forces. And all this useless propaganda, which aims at placing a wedge between us and soldiers, should be frowned upon. Now, there's something that I heard which nearly killed me. My brother, and I'm serious about it. I heard one of these politicians. I was saying that, look, in the past when you saw a soldier, you were afraid. Now, we are coming to a situation where nobody fears a soldier. Why should we be fearing soldiers? The duty of the soldier is to protect me. Why do I fear my protector? We should be loving the soldiers. We should love them. Love them, not fear them. That colonial mentality is still in the heads of some of our politicians. It was in the colonial regime that a deliberate policy was implemented, which said, for example, that if you wanted policemen to work in the Gold Coast, you don't recruit them from the Gold Coast, because they will have relatives in the Gold Coast and they'll be sympathetic to the population. So you go to Nigeria and recruit policemen to come and work in Ghana, so that they will have no sympathy for the population. That was the era when the foolish mentality that we should fear the security forces came into being. We have long passed that era. We have now come into a new era where we should love the security forces. When you see a policeman, you should love the policeman because he's sacrificing his everything to protect you. When you see a soldier, you love him and respect him because he's your protector. You don't fear soldiers, you don't fear policemen. So this outdated, archaic, colonial mentality of fearing security services, should be discarded as quickly as we can. And I'm disgusted that politicians in Ghana today are saying that soldiers have a right to beat us because we don't fear them. Fear them for what? Why should we be fearing soldiers? Look, the killing of this young soldier, 21-year-old soldier, must be condemned. Must be condemned without reservation. But it tells us something. Why is it that mobile phone snatching has become rampant in our society? Why is petty crime rising in our society? do the sociological analysis of crime, it is because the economy has collapsed. It has collapsed. People have become desperate just to be able to buy kenke and fish. Buying kenke and fish today is a courageous act in our country. Buying kenke and fish today is a feat which is commendable. Kenke and fish. That is the crisis we find ourselves in today. You understand? I am deeply worried that this young man was killed under the circumstances he was killed. I feel a deep sense of condolence. The family, his brothers and sisters, if he has any, his mother, I can imagine the grief in which they are, his colleagues in the armed forces and so on. But how come that today nobody can walk through any place without fearing that somebody is going to attack him for his mobile phone? How come? It is about the general, this young man is a victim of the general insecurity in the country. And that general insecurity in the country must not be blamed on the innocent citizens of Ashiaman. There are people that the Constitution has mandated to ensure that we live in a secure environment. If they are not doing their work, let's hold them accountable, and not the poor granite seller in Ashiaman. The poor granite seller in Ashiaman is not responsible for the insecurity in the country. The pito brewer in Ashiaman is not responsible for the insecurity in our country. And come to think of it, the scale of the attack on Ashiaman, involving helicopters and armored vehicles. I mean, you don't even see that in some of the war-torn parts of our world. The army moving tanks and helicopters to go and face and arm civilians. Why does this happen? If it happens in Palestine, we condemn it. If it happens in Yemen, we condemn it. And if it must happen in Ghana, we must condemn it. Without any reservations at all, we ought to condemn it. I am fed up, absolutely fed up, with the double standards and hypocrisy which is being exhibited by those responsible for the creation of the conditions that led to the killing of this soldier. And I'd like to ask one question. We were all in this country during the last elections. 8 people were killed in the last elections. What did the state do? 8 people. 8 people were killed in the last election. Not 1, 8. And I'm a firm believer in the fact that all lives are equal. The lives of civilians and the lives of soldiers are equal and the same. When 8 people were killed in the last election, what did the state do? Nothing. It doesn't end there. Ayawasu West Wogon. We saw the hoodlums who attacked civilians. On the 3rd anniversary of Ayawasu West Wogon, I was privileged to participate in the observance of the anniversary. And I saw people whose legs had been shattered. I saw people who have been crippled. People who would never be able to work again in their lives. And I felt deeply sad that up till today, the perpetrators of those heinous crimes have not been found. We have not moved helicopters and armored vehicles into the communities in which they live to go and wreak havoc. And we know them. The Commission of Inquiry set up by the government itself, everybody who served on that Commission of Inquiry was appointed by the president. Their findings are out. Their findings are telling. They point to the perpetrators. They point to the people who organized them. Have we moved armored vehicles to attack them? What double standards? I'm fed up. I'm disgusted with this cheap political maneuvering, which will lead all of us into a Armageddon. If we continue like this, we will walk straight-faced into a Armageddon.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Pratt. The observation of the scanned signature is very accurate. I didn't pay attention to that. And he's now a brigadier general, by the way. The man in question. I remember the last time I interviewed him, he was Sena. Nowadays, it's difficult to interview people from the Ghana forces. Well, we'll take a break when we'll come back. Very brief break.
Show that signature. That is not his signature. It was scanned.
Does he disprove the signature?
He doesn't have to.
Hello. What are you doing Tuesday to Friday, 7:30 to 9 o'clock p.m. every day? You should be watching The Couch. I'll tell you why. On Tuesdays, we talk social issues, lifestyle, health, all those everyday issues that affect us in the big ways. Late Wednesdays are for book reviews. Thursdays are for the hard talk, those social, economic, policy-oriented, political questions that demand for the tough questions to be asked. And personality profiling Fridays, when we get to know the stories behind the winning personalities we love. Inspirational story for... How do you feel about International Women's Day?
We are shy. I don't believe that. We women, we cannot be shy.
Women should have a seat at the table. There's this cliche that if the table is not there, we build our own tables. But you find a seat at decision making in governance, in all sectors.
We can do more if we don't see another woman as a competition. We must work together. We must not fight against men. We must fight against things that the society imposed on us.
The structure. For me, being a woman does not stop me from achieving what I want to achieve. There's nothing like, although people believe that some areas are male dominated, some of us are there to go beyond. Areas where people think this one is a no-go area. It's just in the mind.
And it's so meaningful because equality says give everybody 2. Equity says give some people 3. Sometimes give some people 5.
Do our best to ensure inclusivity of women and just bridge the divide and the gender parity as well.
When we are together, when we help each other, we have to acknowledge that.
Right.
If she hadn't done her part, definitely I would not have been able to do it. So it was a collective effort of all of us. And so I have said it before and I say it all the time. Our unity, the strength that is in our unity is just out of this world.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, who will take care of your children?
Right.
Who will take care of your hair? That's why I cut mine. Because you must be, if you understand.
You just told me something. I need to cut my hair too.
No, but you understand that you must have a beautiful hair. You must be well dressed and cover all the parts of your body.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom.
Thank you very much for staying with us on the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. Here we say it as it is, no matter who is involved, we live better educated. We are live on Pan-African television. We are live on Radio Gold 90.5. We are also live on Shine FM in Akachi. They are on 96.9. If you're in Akachi, just tune into 96.9, get to hear us. If you are in Adaklu or its surroundings,
Hills FM is taking us live. They are on 91.7. Nyawasi Radio is in Ketekrachi, 89.7. Sela Radio in Dabala, 97.1. Diamond FM Tamale, 93.7. Bewa Radio is in Yendi. They are on 106.5. Radio Kitao in Saboba, 95.7. Benya FM in Elmina, they are on 105.7. There's Global FM in Ho, they are on 105.1. There is Volta 1 TV. There's Zeps FM in Zebila, they are on 95.9. True FM in Adeso is also taking us live, they are on 92.5. There's Lamaya FM in Tripoli, 89.1. Boem FM in Jasikan, 88.7 FM. Lukusi Radio is on 96.1 in Golokwane. Those are the stations that are currently tuned to us live. Now, I'm in the studio with Kwesi Pratt Jnr, who is General Secretary of Socialist Movement of Ghana. There's Mrs. Joyce Bawa Muktari, who is spokesperson for the John Dramani Mahama campaign. There's Solomon Owusu, who is a member of the communication team of the New Patriotic Party. And sitting close to me is Sammy Gyamfi, who is the National Communications Officer of the National Democratic Congress. We'll move on to the discussion on the State of the Nation's address as delivered by the President. And I start with the order I took from the very beginning. I stick to it, and I'll start. Yes, we do.
And, it's very short. So my first recommendation is that stop playing adverts. We need every time we can get.
I hear you.
I mean, State of the Nation address is a serious matter, and we have 1 hour to discuss that. So let's make maximum use of that hour.
I hear you. I hear you. So I start with Sammy Gyamfi once again.
Okay, well, Sena, this State of the Nation address business is a constitutional imperative and an annual ritual. We know that Article 67 of the 1992 Constitution requires the President at the beginning of every parliamentary session to deliver a message on the state of the nation. So like many Ghanaians, I watched the address on television in the hope that our President would deliver an address that reflects the true state of the nation, the challenges that the people of this country are currently confronted with, and more importantly, what his government is doing to address those challenges and to improve the living conditions of the people of this country. But like many Ghanaians, I was very, very disappointed. I was disappointed because listening to the President, it was very clear that he is living in a bubble. The speech he read is no way the state of Ghana, but a figment of the imagination of a president who is far removed, a president who has lost touch, completely lost touch with the realities in our country. It was very clear to me that President Akufo-Addo has no modicum of sensitivity in him for the plight of the ordinary Ghanaian. He simply doesn't care about the times we are living in and the difficulties that we are all going through. And I say so because in the concluding remarks of the President, he made a very profound but disgusting statement, which is that in spite of what we are going through as a country, according to him, we have many things to be grateful about. And two of the things he mentioned are that, number one, our markets and shops are well stocked with products. And that, number two, there are no queues at filling stations in the country. And so he called on the nation and all of us to count our blessings. Count our blessings. You see, I cannot understand why President Akufo-Addo has chosen to lie to himself and to believe the very lie he's telling himself. Clearly, this man is living a deception. Because you don't measure whether a nation is experiencing blessing or not based on the stocks in shops and markets, or whether or not you see queues at filling stations. You measure that based on the living conditions of the people, cost of living, the purchasing power of the people. So yes, there may be products in shops, but at what cost were those products imported into the country? At what exchange rates? What was the quantum of import duties that traders paid at our ports to clear those goods? And whether or not the ordinary man on the street can afford those goods. That is the most important issue that should concern any sensitive president. Sena, we are living in a country today where the rate of inflation, which is a measure of the rate of increase, the average increase in prices, is now hovering around 53%. Specifically, it is 53.6%. Note that this rate of inflation was 15.4% in 2016 under His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. President Akufo-Addo, his vice Alhaji Bawumia, and the entire New Patriotic Party told us that that was unbearable. That inflation rate of 15.4% in December 2016 was unacceptable. It had created a lot of difficulties for the people. And so at page 13 of their 2016 manifesto, they promised to work at and achieve single-digit inflation for this country. Today, we are not just experiencing inflation, we are experiencing hyperinflation of 53.6%, the highest in the last 3 to 4 decades of this country. And in fact, the third highest in the whole of Africa. And the president says that this is something to shout about. This is something to count as a blessing. What kind of president is this? We are living in a country where, as we speak today, lending rates, which stood at averagely 18% to 23% in 2016, has today galloped to 40 to 45% lending rates. That is the rate at which businesses and individuals borrow from our banks, our commercial banks. We are living in a country today where the rate of depreciation of our currency, which stood at 9.6% in 2016, today stands at 23% for the first 2 months of 2023. Making the Ghana cedi the second worst performing currency in the world, second only to the pound of Lebanon. And in fact, this is after the cedi depreciated by over 54% in the last 11 months of last year, making it the worst performing currency in the world. This is what our president wants us to celebrate and count as a blessing. Again, we are living in a country which today is totally bankrupt. A country whose economy is in complete shambles. Everything is in tatters. So much so that we have defaulted on our debt repayments. We can no longer service our debts. And we are virtually forcing our creditors, nations and people who have lent to us, which include innocent Ghanaians, some of whom are pensioners, to forfeit their hard-earned monies and accept crude haircuts on their coupons. We are living in a country today, Sena, where our economy, which used to be rated as B minus, which basically meant that our economy was stable in 2016, today is rated as RD. That is a baller economy, an economy which is below junk status and which has been locked out of the capital market. We cannot even go to the Eurobond market to borrow $1. And instead of the president to show some sensitivity to these circumstances we find ourselves in, sound remorseful, apologize to the nation, and assuage our feelings, the pain people are going through, he chose to use that golden opportunity to engage in self-glorification. Sena, this is not the time for chest beating, for self-glorification, and for flowery speeches, as President Akufo-Addo is known for. The times we are living in are extraordinary times of extreme hardships for Ghanaians. There are many people in Ghana today who are struggling to afford 1 square meal a day. 1 square meal a day. So this is the time for soberness. This is the time for candor. This is the time for the president to show seriousness in addressing the socio-economic problems which plague the nation today. Unfortunately, and very characteristic of him, he chose to engage in his usual empty rhetorics, fake promises, flowery speeches, and so on. And you look at his body language, everything shows that this man is lost in a jungle. He doesn't know what time it is. He is not governing, he's chilling. He simply doesn't give, I don't want to use the F word this morning. He doesn't care about what is happening. And that for me really broke my heart. Secondly, the president made a statement in his address that his government has not spent or borrowed recklessly. And I was amazed. You know, I was surprised that the president could say that. Because if the president credits us with some intelligence, he will know that we know what the facts are. And the facts are very clear that his government has spent and borrowed recklessly and has collapsed the economy. There are economic matrices, indices for measuring whether a government is responsible in this expenditure or borrowing. When it comes to expenditure, the matrix for measuring that is the budget deficit, okay, which looks at the revenue of a country vis-a-vis expenditure. Now, if your expenditure exceeds your revenue, then you are recording deficits. In 2016, when we in the NDC were leaving office, the budget deficit was 6.1% of GDP. 6.1%. We were lambasted. President Mahama was called names and bastardized. They said he was reckless in 2016 because he wanted to win elections. And so you know what they did? They passed a law called the Fiscal Responsibility Act when they won power, and promised that under this act, they will not record a budget deficit of more than 5% because they are going to be very responsible in how they spend. But do you know that their own data supplied to the IMF for that $1 billion rapid credit facility when COVID struck in 2020 shows that in 2018, they recorded a deficit of 7.5% and a deficit of 7% in 2019. That is reckless per their own standards. You understand? With regards to our debt, we know today, everybody knows that we have seen the highest rate of debt accumulation in the history of this country in the last 6 years under the watch of the Bawumia chaired economic management team. From 2016 till now, the public debt of Ghana, which stood at 120 billion in 2016 under His Excellency John Mahama, now stands at 575 billion cedis as per the last quarter. And if you add the Dache bond, the ESLA bond, Sino Hydro, and other contingent liabilities of government, you are talking about a public debt of over 620 billion. Our debt to GDP ratio, which is a measure of the sustainability of our debt, has moved from 56% in 2016 to now 104%. The IMF has said it, the World Bank has said it, and our finance minister and the governor of the Bank of Ghana have all said it, that our debt is no longer sustainable. So, Mr. President, if you did not borrow recklessly, why do you have an unsustainable debt on your hand? How come that you cannot service your debt? How come that you are now implementing a draconian and an unreasonable debt restructuring program? How come that you have been downgraded to below junk status, a baller economy, and has been locked out of the international capital market? Clearly, the fact shows that we have been very reckless in our expenditure and borrowing, and that is why we find ourselves in the economic malaise we have on our hands. You see, Senor, the reason why President Akufo-Addo and the MPP continue to speak to the people of this country like this is because we are not as a people angry enough. We are not angry at all. Because if we were angry, this president should have either resigned or should have apologized to the nation. You come into office on the back of mouth-watering promises to better the lot of the people. Ghana for ya mobododo yetisika so welcome there. You promise to reduce the rate of borrowing. You come and you do the very opposite of that. Why? Because you have a finance minister who is your cousin, who because of greed and selfishness decide to borrow averagely $2 to $3 billion on the Eurobond market every year. Because anytime he borrowed, he and his family got richer through transaction advisor fees on those borrowed funds. So he borrowed to impoverish this country and the people of this country, whilst he was getting richer. And today you have collapsed the economy. As I speak to you, the rate of unemployment has moved from 8.4% in 2016 to 14%. Today we are implementing a total freeze on employment. Total freeze, not a net freeze on public employment. Total freeze. Meaning government is not employing anybody. And the private sector, which is supposed to be the engine of growth and employ many of the teeming unemployed youth of this country, today too is suffocating under the yoke of high tax payments, high lending rates, high inflation, and a draconian debt restructuring policy. Only this Thursday, the Insight newspaper reported that just one construction firm, contractor, the company constructing the KJTR market, has laid off 1,500 workers. Not too long ago, we were told that Amandi has laid off over 1,000 workers. Now, all the contractors working on foreign-funded projects are laying off workers in the hundreds and in the thousands. Why? Because we have defaulted, and so our bilateral partners are no longer releasing funds to these contractors. That is the situation we have on ourselves. A situation where joblessness is on the ascendancy. Young people have no hope as to where to get jobs, whether from the public sector or the private sector. Everything is in disarray. Nothing is working. And yet, the president wants to paint a rosy picture of the situation we find ourselves in. Senor, I know you don't have time, so I'll just touch on 2-3 issues briefly and allow other colleagues to also have their bite. One thing that the president said, which is not new to all of us, has to do with the contrived excuses he mounted for his own failings as president, and the failure of Bawumia and the economic management team to transform our economy as they promised when they were in opposition. His usual blame of COVID-19 for our economic woes. You see, first of all, let us settle this issue of our economy was in a very good situation before COVID struck. Before COVID, we're doing so well. We have transformed the economy, and COVID came and destroyed everything. It is not true. That statement is palpable falsehood. It is not true. Because before COVID, the Ghanaian economy showed serious signs of challenges. Before COVID, our cedi in 2019 depreciated by 13%. And the situation was so worrying that the government constituted a 17-member foreign exchange committee, you remember, to investigate the reason for the depreciating of the cedi. COVID was recorded in our country on the 12th of March 2020. What I'm talking about, what happened in 2019, that was before COVID. Before COVID, our public debt had ballooned from 120 billion to 225 billion. An increase, a nominal increase of 105 billion. And debt to GDP had moved from 56 billion to 56% to 64%. And that excluded the ESLA debt, Sino-Hydro, Dache, which is the collateralization of Get Fund and so on. If you added all that, our debt to GDP was already heading to 70%. That is to unsustainable, limits. Before COVID struck, the budget deficit, as I've told you, because of their reckless spending, had already crossed the 5% acceptable mark. It was 7.5 in 2018 and 7% in 2019. Before COVID, we saw a decline in the real sector, where the manufacturing sector, which grew by 7.9% in 2016, was growing at 6.3% in 2019. The construction sector, which grew by 8.4% under President Mahama, the visionary nation builder, had contracted and was declining at a rate of negative 4.4% before COVID. So clearly it is not true that before COVID we were doing so well and that there was COVID which came to destroy everything. They had started destroying the economy before COVID. COVID only came to make worse an already bad economy. And that for me is very important for us to note. Then even when COVID struck and it affected the economy, revenue mobilization here and there, we were so lucky that we got in excess of 30 billion Ghana cedis as COVID inflows to manage the pandemic. The Auditor General reported total COVID inflows of 22.8 billion in a special audit. But that, excluded the $1 billion special drawing right facility which came into the country in 2021. If you added that, you had in excess of 30 billion. And Sena, according to the Auditor General, out of this amount, 30 billion COVID money, only 11.7 billion was spent on COVID. Only 11.7 billion. So we had in excess of 18 billion free money to do other things, plug revenue shortfalls, and to improve the economy, improve the livelihoods of our people. But you know what they did? Instead of focusing on saving lives, they used COVID as a corruption bonanza, as an avenue to milk the state coffers. Monies which were meant to save lives were stolen. Today the president says that they didn't abuse COVID funds. Really? Hasn't he read the Auditor General's report on the audit of COVID funds? The Auditor General says that we took $247,000 to buy medical equipment to save lives. Yet those equipment which were received at the central medical stores, when they were dispatched to specific health facilities, never reached those facilities because these greedy MPP politicians stole those machines, sold them, and shared the money for themselves. That is according to the Auditor General. According to the Auditor General, we paid the company 1.4 million Ghana cedis to go and do COVID protocols education in our SHS. That is some 14 billion old Ghana cedis. The education was not done, but the money was chopped. According to the Auditor General again, we paid 11.9 million Ghana cedis for hot meals with COVID funds, with no receipt to show for, but honor certificates. When the companies which supply those food items are registered with the GRA, registered under school feeding, they have receipts, they have invoices and all that. Bawumia and Akufo-Addo had no receipts to support the 110 billion OCDs they spent on kenke without fish and rice without chicken. Just for 3 weeks of partial lockdown. We spent 37 million cedis, equivalent to 370 billion OCDs, on so-called free water with no water bills. Can you believe it? No water bills to show for. In Bawumia's hometown, Nalerigu, We gave a contractor a contract to build an isolation center at a cost of 15 million cedis. Paid him an advance payment of 4.5 million cedis without a performance bond. When the contractor took the money, that was it. He never stepped at the side. You chopped the money. Your own parliamentary candidate for Sagnerigu for the 2020 elections and vice chairperson in the northern region, Felicia Tete, says that you distributed COVID funds to them like bullfruit. She got 100,000, 1 billion OCDs. Her constituency chairman, 50,000. Ordinary executives, 10,000 CDs each, COVID money. That is how you chopped it left, right, center, like there was no tomorrow. How wicked can you be? That a disease which was killing people, you got money to deal with the disease far in excess of what you needed, and you decided to waste it. And today you say what? So, Sena, this State of the Nation address has only reinforced the dishonesty of President Akufo-Addo, his lack of sensitivity, the fact that this is a man who is a mistake, a man who is he is the very problem he's pretending to solve. Today, where is Bawumia, the economic messiah? Where is he in all these issues? Nowhere to be found. And instead of them showing us the concrete steps they are taking to resolve these issues, the president goes to parliament and says, oh, he now has a new nickname for Bawumia, which is E-Bawumia. And we've since found out that E stands for empty Bawumia, which means that Bawumia is empty, full of talk, but very empty when it comes to real ideas, real solutions for turning the economy around. There are a lot of things that has to be said, but because of time, I will end here and say that this government must wake up from its slumber. They must set up. I have no doubt in my mind that come 2024, majority of the Ghanaian electorate will vote for change. But the question is, what happens from now till 2024? If care is not taken, we will have no country by 2024. And so we must all be concerned about what is happening to this country. And I am very worried. And I think that if President Akufo-Addo has any conscience left in him, he will realize that he's really messing up and set up and do. I mean, the little he can do within the limited time left to at least ameliorate the plight of the suffering masses of this country. Things are not going well, Sena.
Thank you. Thank you. This is Papa Bisiu from Accra, who says the president says he has not spent our money in a reckless manner. Again, he says the totally messed up economy under his rule can be overcome by managing the economy intelligently. It seems the president is insulting himself. Question to the president: is flying and bathing in the air in luxurious jets intelligent enough? Is having overbloated ministers and appointees intelligent enough? Is overborrowing for consumption intelligent enough? Is putting up unnecessary national cathedral by wasting hard-earned taxpayers' cash on it, whilst Shama people, etc., seriously yearning for hospitals and nothing is happening intelligent enough? That's Papa Bisiu. Message is sent. This is Dennis Akwete, who says, so sad. Even at this point, our president still continues to blame Ghana's present condition on COVID-19 and the Russia-Ukraine war. The Sena was therefore a theoretical exercise in futility, as it failed to address the reality of our time. On Ashaiman incidents, even as we condemn the heinous and barbaric act that led to the killing of the young soldier, Trooper Imoro Sharif, it was bad for the military in a democracy to have responded the way they did, as if the Ghana Police Service has become so helpless and more confused was the regrettable missing out of the said incidents in the president's Sena. That is coming from a Comrade Shine says, much as I sympathize with both the military and the family of the deceased soldier and condemn the act, the invasion of Ashaiman Taifa by the military is equally condemnable. A number of civilians have been killed by both the police and the military over the years. Civilians have never invaded their barracks because we are entreated to be law-abiding. I guess that it might happen that one day the civilians will retaliate, and that would be a very bad situation. Well, so those are some of the messages I'm going through. Going through more, like I keep promising. So, Mr. Owusu.
Well, Sena, back to the old story, back to the same propaganda that was spewed by the National Democratic Congress in 2016, in which the Ghanaian listened to them and gave them 44% at the polls. Back to the same rhetorics that was spewed in the days leading to the 2020 elections. The Ghanaian evaluated those speeches, those statements from the National Democratic Congress and said, look, we have heard you, yet we still believe that the NPP is a better alternative or a better party capable of governing and governing well more than the National Democratic Congress. Yes, indeed, I agree with my brother when he says that majority of Ghanaians will vote for a change in 2024, because definitely there will be a change at the Jubilee House. The Ghanaian will vote for a new personality who has never occupied the Flagstaff House or the Jubilee House, be it as a former president or a vice president. And so definitely the Ghanaian will carry Alan John Kojecha Martin right away to the Jubilee House to implement his plan of the great transformational plan that will deal with the myriad of problems that we have as a country. The State of the Nation's address, Sena, as we all know, is a constitutional provision, it's a constitutional activity under Article 67. And when you read it carefully, it only tells you that the president will go at the beginning of each session, go there, or before the end of the session, go there and deliver a message of the State of the Nation. And so clearly the Constitution did not give a clear-cut guidelines within which the president has to deliver. And so what has been happening in the past, as peculiar to all presidents, is to follow convention. And I listened to the president, and what he did was not different from what his predecessors have done over the years. Indeed, he took us through a journey. He took us through where we have come from, where we are, and where we are going. We took over the reins of government in 2017, 7th of January. At the time that our inflation was 15.4, at the time that our GDP was 3.6, at the time that the average lending rate, contrary to what my brother says, was hovering around 42%.
What?
At the time, you see, you were giving 23%, and I was thinking you were coming from, probably you were not following the interest rate in this country. The average lending rate in this country in 2016 was 42%. Quote me any day. You see, Mr. Pratt, would you extend the principle that you laid here to them so that they will be quiet as I deliver in peace? So you are telling him. So Sammy, Mr. Pratt is telling you that have that heart to absorb what is coming, because these are preliminaries. So we took over such an economy, and when we came, we did not complain, but rather decided to build on where we are taking from. After all, governance or government is a continuous process, and that you take over as an Ebusuapeni with all the assets and liabilities, and then you need to manage them. So when we did, we immediately doubled our GDP. We brought inflation down. Lending rates started seeing decline, and so on and so forth. And that is why it is important that to be able to measure this government accurately and be sincere to the good people of this country, you must take the 3 years from 2017 to the time that COVID struck and look at the indicators to be able to make a fair assessment. Yes, GDP deficit in 2020 was below 5%. And in fact, that deficit, as has been projected by the IMF, was even missed in 2016. In any case, why would anybody want to compare the last year of any government to a government that is yet to have its last year? At least I would have waited to listen to our brothers when we are in our last year, that is 2024. Now, I find it very difficult when I hear our brothers from the National Democratic Congress have an issue with the NPP or the Nana Akufo-Addo's government always referring us back to the COVID days or citing COVID together with the Russia-Ukraine war as the basis or as part of the reasons why we are where we are. In the last State of the Nation's address of the former President, John Mahama, which was delivered on the 5th of January 2017, he traced the difficulty in the economy. And I'm going to cite the reasons that he took Ghanaians through that the journey of doomsday, the journey of high unemployment, the journey of 4 years deficit in our trade position, the journey of a porous balance of current account position, and so on and so forth. He says Ghanaians encountered difficulty or challenges in the economy because the Chinese economy has slowed down. The United States of America had increased their Fed rate. And in fact, the mere fact that the US government decided to increase its Fed rate, investors had the appetite of moving their invested funds from our economy to the US economy. The world market prices of our commodities, i.e. cocoa, gold, are all dipped. Changing climate and rise of insurgency. These were the reasons that the former administration attributed to our economic challenges. So you can imagine if there was anything semblance of COVID or Russia invading Ukraine, then I'm sure all of us would have been starved to death. None of these reasons given led to the country shutting our economy, led to the country closing beaches, led to the country closing pubs, led to the country closing markets, led to this country closing schools, led to the country letting civil servants stay in their homes and being paid. Yet the country could not power our electricity needs because we did not have the funds. And that was our situation. In our case, anybody that wants to discount the effects of COVID will just be doing the usual propaganda. But I'm not one of those that would attribute all our problems to COVID and Russia, Ukraine. Indeed, there are other factors that has also contributed to where we are. That includes our inability as a country to move our tax to GDP from its current situation of 14% to above 18%. Because, and I mind you, any country can only develop through taxation. Nobody has any money sitting anywhere to just come and spend on the country. All the lousy promises that political parties give, they give at the background, at the back of the fact that there would be taxes mobilized to engage in any developmental activity. Sena, the president touched on all the thorny issues facing the country. What are the issues that we are facing now? It is not a secret that the economy is facing challenges. He said it during the State of the Nation address last year. He repeated it through his Minister of Finance, and consistently everyone admits that we have challenges. And that is why in the State of the Nation address as delivered, he spent all the time on the economy. There is a reason why today we are doing the domestic debt exchange program, because we are in some form of difficulty. Yes, as a political party or as a government, as parliamentarians, there were things that they could have done to salvage the situation. Can you imagine that in 2021-2022 budget, an irresponsible opposition party in parliament goes to approve an entire budget? And Sena, what is budget? Budget is simply expenditure and revenue. They go and approve that, yes, we agree entirely with your expenditure and revenue measures, yet when it came to the revenue measure of e-levy, they said no, they were not going to agree. How would any investor in this economy have confidence that we could pay back any invested monies when they know that government can only pay back any facility through the taxes it collects from its people? So we had an opposition party, first time in the history, leading a demonstration against a tax measure, fighting a tax handle in parliament, which tax handle later they came to accept in last year's budget. So why was the fighting? There wasn't any need to do that. Now, you go into what we have used the money for. And my brother made a statement that is very common with the NDC and its communicators, that we have borrowed recklessly. That word seems to be dominating the internet space. And that anytime the country borrows, the finance minister profits from it. What in effect means is that anytime the finance minister borrows, both the NDC and MPP members of parliament profit from it. Because what does Article 181 says under our constitution? Every loan that this government takes goes through parliament. Is that not the case? Loans are approved by parliamentarians, which includes the MPP and NDC. Are the NDC members telling us that they go to approve without the merit of the loan because Ken Oforiatta is going to profit from it, or they enjoy from the largesse that comes out of it from Mr. Oforiatta? We cannot be doing that to ourselves. This country is not self-sufficient, and our budget anytime, any day tells us that we spend most of our revenue on emolument and interest payment. And unless and until we are able to deal with the fundamentals of this economy, no amount of sugarcoating words will save us from this situation. And that is how come our brothers from the NDC, as we speak, even in opposition, has not provided any clear-cut plan or policy. They don't have to try to even give assurance to the people of this country that given in an unlikely event that they are given an opportunity to lead us, this is our plan. The State of the Nation gave an indication how government intends to deal with the myriad of problems. I'm sure you read in there that government has taken the steps of trying to deal with the issue of importation. We cannot be a country where we import close to 13.7 billion according to last year's budget and still think that we can be doing anything. And to that extent, products like rice, sugar, ceramics, and so on, government has given the indication that it is going to pursue domestication in that light. That is a forward-thinking government, knowing the problem and putting in place measures to deal with them. Again, if you look at the various expenditures that this government has undertaken, which was never the case. Remember, Sena, we were not paying people's fees at the secondary school level free of charge, the entire country. Even when the former administration, the former president administration, John Mohammed's administration, told the country that they were embarking on progressively free education, they could only take care of 140,000. And that was an achievement, as stated by the former president in his State of the Nation address in 2017. How much more a party in government, the new patriotic party in government, the Akufo-Addo government, taking care of currently close to 2 million people, anybody will say it has been reckless. We came to meet an economy that teachers and nurses allowance. And people don't know, if you have never been a teacher training student or a nurse before, a student before, you will not appreciate the importance of the allowance. When we came, they had scrapped it. Under a reckless president, under a reckless government, we restored it.
You have 2 minutes to wrap up.
Which one is the 2 minutes? We just started, you said 2 minutes.
You have 2 minutes.
I took over.
You are not telling me how to allocate time. I'm saying you have 2 minutes to wrap up for me, please.
So the issue is that when the time is Sena, why do you do that to me?
I apologize. Look at my time for me.
You may have to add some 2 minutes to it. Sometimes you need to protest so that.
In fact, you're still not helping me.
So the president took care of all the aspects of the economy and told us where we were, where we are, and where we are going. And clearly, when the IMF, when we are able to embark on the IMF program, definitely our current predicaments will be dealt with. And that is why, if you can, you would realize, the party keeps telling the country that it is not about our current situation that matters the more. It is about how well and how best we manage ourselves so that we do not go back to the IMF in beyond the 2025. And that is why we must vigorously pursue the path of production. The path of production. Else, Sena, this is the 18th time that we are going to the IMF. It is true that we have borrowed. It is true that every government borrows. And until we make a major shift from our current way of doing things, borrowing will be part. In fact, even when we are doing well, we will still borrow. The countries like America borrow, but it is what you do with the borrowing. But let me say that, is it bad to be constructing roads with the borrowed money? Is it bad to have borrowed and added 10,875 kilometers to our road network? Nobody can tell us that. Is it bad to be paying workers? Is it bad that during COVID we extended close to 580 million to 302,000 SMEs? Nobody can convince me that these are bad initiatives. When our brothers make the mention of the fact that we have borrowed, I want them to give specifics, how reckless we have been in that regard. Once we are able to do so, Sena, we would be going places. Now, the president did not embark on empty rhetorics. The president has been clear from day one. I believe that the only issue as a country that we must expedite action on is the fact that the vaccines that are not available currently, in terms of the vaccines for the kids, the government would expedite actions and get to the people of this country. Else, all other aspects of the economy was captured, and nobody who is honest in this country will say the president did not capture so. Can you imagine the courthouses that we have built? Several of them. Can you imagine the investment we have done in within the army? Unprecedented. Look at what we have done in the health sector. A lot of hospitals that have been built. Unprecedented. Unmatched by any administration. You understand? And so, no. But Sena, today I will officially protest to Pan-Africa that you decided to.
You're even not helping me.
Don't worry.
In fact, you are, of all of us, I think you and Mr. Pratt are a regular presence on this show. So you should really understand.
I will end my submission.
You should really understand.
I'll end my submission.
Okay. So I'll jump to Mrs. Joyce Bawa-Muktari to hear what she has to say.
Well, sometimes when I listen to my brother-in-law, I ask whether we're actually in the same country. I don't know, maybe he gets his facts from somewhere else. And we all go to the same market, we eat the same dishes, we practically breathe the same air. So I'm wondering where you get your energy and all the gas stuff from. Maybe the Alan campaign has something that is offering you. There's a big push somewhere. Huh?
Wow.
Anyway, look, Sena, you know, I sometimes don't even know where to start from. Maybe I should just take a cue from the Honorable ABF Seni that basically all that the President did in his State of the Nation address was just to blow hot air. You know, when you have absolutely nothing to say, when you have nothing to offer, when you don't even know what you're saying, you know, you tell yourself all the things that make you feel good. So I think that President Akufo-Addo on this occasion was actually imagining what his impressions are about the country that he was elected to govern. You know, Sena, we have on our hands a whole mixed bag, a complete potpourri of all sorts of things in defense of this uncanny loyalty, in defense of a certain clanism, in the words of the Honorable Freddie Blay, some level of nepotism, some chronism. It's a whole mixed bag. It's very difficult for you to pinpoint one thing that has led us where we are today, beyond all the things that we've all spoken at length about. I mean, is it in the rhetoric about taking us from taxation to production? It has failed. Is it from arresting the exchange rates? It has failed. Is it from knowing that the Bank of Ghana has all the money? It has failed. Is it from us knowing for a fact that we are, you know, working towards what? Ghana beyond aid? I have never seen such highfalutin, excuse my French, nonsense. Just empty words that mean absolutely nothing, that connote nothing, spoken with a certain magniloquence never before heard or seen. But the best part of it all is that there is no admission of any sort of responsibility. So it is this fake phantom built around a certain negative positivity that is almost as if it's only the king that is standing there but not realizing that everybody else can see right through you and know that all that you are saying is just that, hot air. What is it really that President Akufo-Addo spoke about that you and I do not know even better about? For the first time, I'm sure you noticed, and this has been going on for the last 2 years, he no longer speaks about corruption or the fact that he's going to use the Anas principle. He's no longer telling the good people of Ghana to submit, try me to and see. He's no longer even telling us that he knows what to do to repair this economy. In fact, if there's anything that he did, it is to admit the recklessness that has led us where we are. It is in what he did not say that we all knew what had actually happened. So personally, we have no reason to believe even that any effort whatsoever is being made. That is almost as if it's you know, there's a certain conversation going on now about the Gen Zs and how they demand things from people, the sense of entitlement that they have. It actually epitomizes the way our president delivers these statements to us. You understand? There is what he thinks as against what the reality is. And it simply has nothing to do with what we really feel as a people. Look, start checking on every key facet of our economy. There's a whole litany of all the reasons why we ought not even to have these conversations. Why we ought not to sit here and be lectured in any way by presidential or government spokespersons and communicators. Because honestly, they've actually missed the road. They are totally in a certain illusion that has no clue what the reality on the ground really is. But I know it is all just part of that. It is a certain pretend to act as if everything were normal, knowing very well that nothing is normal. Look, beyond all the things that we all know, beyond the high cost of living, beyond the economic hardships, beyond the, you know, high cost of food, hyperinflation, name it, across this country, But in all of it, there's only one thing that has not stopped. That is the wanton wastage by government, the huge expenditure, the corruption, the litany of money stolen without recourse to anybody. In fact, when the Nombo told us that any attempt to fight corruption, you would find corruption fighting you back, what did we think? When the Auditor General dared to publish the facts of the special audit report, what did we realize? He was actually attacked, even given instructions to an independent body such as the Auditor General. In any case, whose monies are being expended? The money belongs to taxpayers. What is the role of the Auditor General? It is for the Auditor General to evaluate, to analyze how these monies have been expended. At a time when our debts are way above 600 billion and counting and rising, when all the international bond markets have literally locked their doors to us, even as we beg, we are failing to beg in all humility and deference to those we are asking for to give us the money. We are coming out with our chests bursting with all sorts of connotations and slogans about how we're talking to China and they have a certain election or congress going on and we have to wait. We are speaking to the Paris Club of our investors, name it. But you see, everybody now knows that this is a government whose record in the annals of this country will rank as the worst, as the most inept, as the emptiest. Juxtapose what we hear today as against the promises of yesterday. Yes. Ask yourself what really has changed in all the conversations that are taking place. The only thing that is new is the fact that at least now we admit that because there is roads or some addition to the road network, at least some work has been done. Do we now eat roads? Are we putting the concrete in our stomachs to feel full when we have no food to eat? Why? What has changed? Talking about accountability and transparency, but failing to admit the corruption and the high levels of corruption and blatant stealing that's brought us where we are. When was the last time you heard His Excellency the President shower flowering praises on the Office of Special Prosecutor since the exit of the Honorable Matsamidu? When was the last time you heard the President talk about referring matters of this nature to any of the investigative bodies? They've all been rendered what? Totally inept and inactive. When was the last time you even heard His Excellency the President talk about making Accra or Ghana the cleanest city? Nothing. On all the key reasons why people elected this administration into office, they no longer even speak to any of those issues. What happened to the E-levy? It failed to deliver the roads and all the things it promised. Look, that report that Sammy Gyamfi quoted from copiously also speaks about other resources shared out to all sorts of people and companies and groups. There's one that I found very interesting. You know, this is all stealing in the name of health. A pandemic. At a time when people were literally giving back in sympathy as a way of showing empathy and sensitivity, these ones were busy filling their pockets with whatever was available. Look, there's an amount of over $120 million that was given to a contractor by UNICEF. 81.8 million is still outstanding, and nobody's talking about it. Little wonder then that the Attorney General thinks that the Auditor General's special report casts government in very, very, very bad light. Naturally. Yes. Secondly, they have given out as much as over 10 million, oh, listen to this carefully, as premium for special life insurance cover. Sammy Gyamfi, I would want for you to find out whose insurance company
Let me find out for you.
The premium. I'm sure you will do so happy.
Insurance. Enterprise.
Find out
company associated with
who received all this. And you know, you talk about the fact that we say what and we say what. Look, the Honorable Kenneth Ofori-Atta admitted on the floor of Parliament that in transaction advisory services alone, his company data bank received how much? Over 156 million Ghana cedis. Has he returned the money to chest? The answer is no. Why would we allow one human being to hold us all to ransom? Why? Can you imagine that all these monies that were shared like Kwesi, that we had even put it in one basket, and every household had received something like we see in most of these Arab rich countries? Then at least people know that we're staying at home and someone is helping us. Look at our utilities. Electricity alone has gone up by 30%. Look at LPG, has gone up by another 30%. And recently you heard the spat between the former MD of the Ghana Gas and Cylinder Company and of course the powers that are appointed there. It is, look, the truth is that it is the whole raft of grave omissions, bad policies, reckless borrowing, a certain jingoistic arrogance that I don't even know where it is coming from. What happened to all the humility of Samisha? I'm too old to spend your money, but suddenly you are in all these beautiful aircrafts and carriers. Have you checked in our ports recently? Throughput is at the lowest. Go and cross-check on cocoa and cocoa board. Cocoa production is almost at half of where we left off from and handed over to them. This was a decision that condemned even the 1 million tons. If you remember, today we are doing under half. And they are still singing from a hymn book that you and I do not even know which of the verses to attach to the songs they are singing. We can sing, we can scream, we can shout all we want. Sena, there is no effort whatsoever or even an attempt to fight corruption. No. The whole rhetoric about Ghana beyond aid was just that. Highfalutin noise. We didn't even believe in what we were doing. I am even surprised even that the president will read some of the things that he read out and actually describe them as matters to do with the state of our country and our economy. How is he addressing insanitary conditions? How is he addressing matters to do with poverty, hardship, high cost of living? Look at the cost of basic medications on the market. The subject of vaccines, we've spoken. Look at the cost of sanitary towels and sanitary pads. And you remember the debate in Parliament under President Mahama when an attempt was made even to remove taxes and to apply a certain grant from the World Bank to the provision of sanitary towels to schools free of charge. Recently, just before the 2020 election, I heard our now totally disgraced chairman of the hitherto solid economic management team proclaimed that they were going to remove import duties on sanitary towels. What has happened to that promise? Nothing. But look, there is a whole list of money stolen in the name of health and health facilities. Little wonder then that our health even is where it is, that even the people themselves are no longer healthy. That most of the diseases that we thought we had actually even eradicated are all coming back. You know, some of these things as a result of what? Poverty. Lack of resources. Lack of access. Lack of good water, potable water. So think about what happens in our rural communities. Sena, if I start with the list of the sins of this government, we probably will sit here the whole day, the whole month, the whole year. We will never finish. But let me say one thing, that Ghanaians ought to start to revisit the nature of the leaders we want for ourselves as we go along. The promises that we failed to vet have all come back to haunt us now. If we want to speak about President Akufo-Addo and this MPP government, there will be very little room left even to save ourselves from how we are going to survive until the next election. But Sena, it is imperative that we all ask and demand Not just transparency, which is just to expose the rot. We expect the Auditor General to take steps, immediate steps, urgent steps, to recover through the Attorney General's department, and after completing investigations, to recover some of these monies. Look at the sheer size of government. I'm sure you saw the list of government expenditure recently. Batteries, car tires, fuel. I think it is time for us to re-examine what really constitutes good governance in our part of the world. Because you see, if we don't start to examine closely, first, some of these empty promises. Secondly, the caliber of people who put themselves up for leadership. Thirdly, the character of these leaders, their ethics, their values, what it is that propels them to want so badly to lead this country. We must start to examine all of these things. But let me state without any fear of equivocation that the reasons why we are here is the downright dishonesty, the stealing, the corruption. Look, where are all those so-called better managers of the economy?
Unfortunately, my time is fast spent. In fact, I allowed you because Mr. Paz had indicated that I should just let you. But I think he will make a few comments, then we'll close the show.
I remember this very famous proverb, which Alhaji kept repeating over and over again. And he said that those who have no drums to beat their chests. The president indeed did a lot of chest beating. That's all I have to say.
Which chest did he beat?
Well, thank you.
Which chest?
Thank you.
This
is Nia Boyanan who says, Sena, today, no bank in China will accept an LC from any Ghanaian bank for the purposes of doing business. But when your banking sector is downgraded to this level, it simply means your economy is totally collapsed. Then he has a message for Solo. He said, tell Solo, a good economic handler should have predicted the difficulties and put forward appropriate responses than not today, when we find ourselves in crisis. That's coming from Nia Boyanan. There are a few more messages where Kwesi from Gomo says there's no justification for stabbing young, promising soldier, and there's absolutely no reason for soldiers to sue the community. The insecurity, injustice, and dishonesty is becoming too much under Nanado regime. Solo is defending this. God save Ghana. That's coming from Kwesi in Gomo. There's Musa Bato. Sena, I essentially agree with Joyce Bauer. I wonder the silence of people who were louder during JM's reign. The justification by the defense minister was absurdly astonishing. It's ironically unjustified for anybody to support the military coup in Ashiaman. Government has been reckless in providing security in the noted volatile area. The reaction of government in matters of security is always an afterthought. Hadi in Pig Farm says, when will Mother Ghana rest small under this illegal connection government? President Nanado is the only man who has disappointed the past, disappointed the present, and disappointed the future. Allah save Mother Ghana from the hands of these, he says, illegal connection government. To my brother Solo, keep quiet and they will call you a fool, say something and they will know you are one. Hadi, Pig Farm sender. Alhaji Hamza, your old people are not very charitable.
Oh, today they are, I know. When I was coming, they told me.
Alhaji Hamza says, truth be said, what happened in Ashaiman by the Ghana forces is so shameful, to say the least. The Ghana forces should be made to know that we are living in the constitutional, we are not in the military, we are not living in the animal kingdom, nor in the Banana Republic. Then humane torture and brutalities by the Ghana forces on civilians of this country is becoming one too many, and the earlier something is done about it, the better. There's okay, there are a few more messages. I can't go through all of them, but Ruben prepared this for me. I understand today is the birthday of Mr. Fritz Bafo, who celebrates his birthday today. Tomorrow will be the birthday of Alfred Sugritia, I think former Minister for Information. Then his own birthday, Rubenado's birthday, is on will follow. That will be, I think that's March 13. March 13. Okay, I also understand today is the birthday of the wife of Comrade Kwesi Pratt Jnr, Mrs. Pratt. Behind my ears. So happy birthday to Mrs. Pratt. Happy birthday. And then
oh, this one I'm waiting for the party. I'm following you wherever you pass. I'm inside.
And well,
so you want to take me out? You see discrimination.
Well, let me close the show by once again saying a very big thank you to our friends at Odududio. They hosted us ahead of Independence Day last Saturday, and they gave us quite a good reception. We are very grateful to them. Thank you very much. The chairperson of the NDC in that constituency, I think, celebrated his birthday on March 6th, Independence Day. Belated happy birthday to you. I think there are two independent. I think okay. Also celebrates his birthday on.
Kwabla Japan also did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was his birthday.
Wow. Yeah. So a happy belated birthday to all of them. Belated happy birthday to Mr. Ofosuambu, who also celebrated his birthday yesterday. And then I would like to extend our condolences to the family of Albert Aheto. I'll come to Logas first, but Albert, we understand we lost Albert Aheto very painfully. He's a very close friend of ours here. And so our condolences to the family of Albert Aheto. That's a tough loss. Condolences to Logas, who is his father today, and Professor Michael Kwe, who burying the mother. The wife, Professor Michael Kwe's wife, has also passed on. There's a lot to say, but thank you very much for making time to join us on Alhaji and Alhaji. Oh, okay. Please go ahead.
So a happy birthday to you, Sheriff.
You see, that was my mate.
Wishing you
I
I'm
was waiting
not
for
minding you. When you were screaming, I was waiting to fix you. That you should show respect.
That's my mate. You see, Sheriff, you see what your sister come to do to me here.
Show respect.
Thank you very much for making time. A big thank you to Comrade Kwesi Pratt Jnr. as always. A big thank you to Mrs. Joyce Bawa Mokhtari, who is spokesperson for the John Dramani Mahama campaign. We'll get there. We'll get, of course, that opportunity provided. And a big thank you to Solomon Owusu. Oh, hey, you want to talk about Alan Koyecha?
When you give them the chance, you give the chance to talk about Alan's campaign. That's right.
Okay. He's a member of the MPP's communication team, and of course a member of the Alan Chomantin campaign team. And sitting right by me is
truly African.